I found a letter that my mother never got around to sending. It contained just one sentence. I beg you, never look for me or the child. At the time, I didn't know that these words would change everything I thought about my life. I never saw my mother write that letter. For me, the 1990s are a few yellowed photos, a shoebox, and a brief. I'll tell you about it sometime. But when you hold a piece of paper that smells of dust and old glue in your hands, your imagination fills in the rest. She is sitting in the kitchen of a small rented apartment. It is night outside, and water is slowly boiling on the stove, never to become tea. On the table are envelopes, a pen, and a thin sheet of paper, already almost filled with her even, almost teacher-like handwriting. I beg you, never look for me or the child. She writes quickly, as if afraid that the words will escape if she gives them a second to rest. Then she rereads it, presses her lips together, folds the letter, puts it in the envelope, and lights the empty one. The flame engulfs the white rectangle, the edges turn black, and she watches as the paper curls into a boat in the metal bowl. What I call fear in her eyes could have been anything, but I think it was fear. The present smells of chlorine from the morgue and cheap coffee. The funeral ended an hour ago. My mother's house, now my house, is held together by habit, like old cabinets on rusty hinges. I am in the kitchen just like she was then, only instead of boiling water, there is silence broken by the noise of the refrigerator. On the table are not envelopes but keys to the pantry, which my aunt thrust into my hand. Her papers are there. Few can sort them out. The pantry smells of mothballs. The lamp flickers like an old heart. Boxes, bags, a suitcase with a torn handle, and the same box that shoes used to come in. Brown cardboard taped diagonally across it, the word miscellaneous written on it. I peel off the tape. There are letters inside. There are many. Different envelopes, different stamps, but all without postmarks. Some have addresses, most do not. A few have only initials. One says, "For you if necessary." I don't immediately understand who is. My thoughts waver between future me and someone else she didn't name. I put the letters into two piles. Those with dates and those without. The dates range from the mid-90s to the 2000s. I sit on the edge of the washing machine and read at random. The first pile contains shopping lists that turn into confessions. Why she is afraid of telephones. The second pile contains memories of a trip to the lake. The third pile contains a single sentence. I have never been brave, but I am learning to be responsible. I flip through a few more and notice an envelope that is different from the others. The paper is thicker, the edges are faded, the glue is yellowed. In the upper corner is a date, a year before I was born. It feels like something has cracked under the floor, the foundation has cracked. I pick up the envelope carefully. There is no address on the front. Only a name, clear and even without embellishment, as if she was afraid of making a mistake in a single detail. I run my finger over the letters, as if it could give me an answer. My fingers are trembling. I tear the edge with my fingernail. The paper cracks like ice. There are two sheets inside. The first is short. You said that truth is what keeps people together. I don't know how to hold on. And I don't want you to hold us together by force. If you love me even a little, don't look for me. I'm not asking for myself. For the child. The second is longer. It mentions the night at the station, the doctor who knows how to make it quiet. Some clinic with nameless corridors. It is written carefully with pauses. You can see how the ink thickens and then fades. I read and catch myself holding my breath. My name is Alice. I am 35. And I just found out that before I was born, there was someone my mother wrote to, telling him never to look for us. I've been standing in the pantry for 40 minutes. My legs are numb. I sit down on the floor between a suitcase and a box of books. From the pantry, I can see a strip of light from the kitchen. Somewhere in the house, pipes are creaking. Sounds familiar from childhood, but today they seem different. The phone is ringing in the kitchen. I don't answer it. A message from the editor. How are you? Hang in there. Take another day off if you need to. I type thank you and don't send it. I put the phone face down and return to the letters. I am tempted to read everything, but my professional instinct prevails. Classify, take notes, don't trust your first impression. I write in my notebook. Box 1. Miscellaneous. The envelope is thick. The date is a year before I was born. The contents. A request not to search. References. Doctor, silence, clinic. I put a question mark next to doctor. And another next to silence. And I feel ashamed of the coldness of these notes. This is my mother. Her voice through the years. But part of me, the journalist, the sober one, knows that if it's really important, you have to look at it without rose-colored glasses. I take out 2 more envelopes without dates. One contains a list of names. Rachel, Victoria, Emma, Sarah. Some have dots or dashes next to them. The other contains a photograph. A young Grace on a bench by the river. I turn it over and see the inscription. The summer before. Before what? No date. No explanation. I didn't notice how dark it had gotten. I turn on the light, put the kettle on and finally make some tea. The mug warms my hands but inside I feel cold. I open my notebook and write at the top. What I know for sure. Mom kept these letters on purpose. Some of them are from before I was born. There is someone she asked us not to look for. And there is a doctor. I don't have time to put a full stop when I see a detail that has been in front of my eyes all this time. On that thick envelope, which I opened carefully, is the name of the addressee. I immediately read it as a general address and didn't read it carefully. Now I look closely under the lamp. The ink has smudged a little, but the letters are neatly arranged. I slowly say it aloud as if it will help my brain catch up with my eyes. John Barton. I sat by the box until late at night. It was already past 1 o'clock when I decided to stop. The letters lay in piles, dated, undated, and separately, the one with the name John Barton. I put them back, closed the box, but my hands trembled for a long time. As I was climbing the stairs, the phone rang. The screen showed the name Mia. My daughter. She was sleeping behind the wall. Her tablet was connected to a shared account, but the sound was so sharp that I froze. The screen flashed again and went dark. I turned off the light and lay down, but I couldn't sleep. One phrase kept running through my head. She wrote this letter before I was born. In the morning, I pretended that everything was fine. Mia, 9 years old, was sitting at the table drawing. Mom, were you crying? She asked. I was just looking at Grandma's old things, I replied. Grandma wrote to everyone, even me. But I couldn't read yet, Mia smiled. Her simplicity made it all the more painful. How little I knew about my own mother. After breakfast, I opened my laptop. Among the worksheets was one with no subject and no sender. In the preview it just said, "You finally opened it." It was like being struck by lightning. I opened the message. Inside was only that phrase. No signature. No attachments. The sender's address was a string of random characters. I checked everything I could. IP, date, activity. The email was created yesterday. My address was in the to field. The reply field was empty. It was impossible to click reply. I looked at the access log. The last entry was yesterday at 11:47 p.m. The same time I was in the pantry. The system showed my own laptop my IP address. But I knew for sure. I hadn't opened the email. My throat went dry. I walked around the apartment, checked the locks, the windows, even the closet in the hallway. Everything was quiet, but the feeling that someone had touched my life did not go away. I did what any journalist does when faced with something strange. I opened a new document and wrote everything down point by point. Box of letters. Letter to John Barton. Email with no sender. Strange activity in the system. By the time I finished, it was already past noon. Mom, Mia called. Look what I drew. On the sheet of paper was a woman with long hair and a child next to her. Above them was the sun with dark rays, as if it were burning. That's Grandma and you, she explained. And the sun just turned out weird. Very nice, sweetie, I replied, though inside I felt a knot in my stomach. In the evening, I spent a long time searching for information about John Barton. The surname is uncommon, but there are many matches. Journalists, doctors, teachers. None of them match the age. I saved the links and postponed checking them. Around midnight, I turned off my laptop and went to pour some water. When I came back, the screen was lit up. I was sure I had turned it off. A short phrase flashed in white letters on a black background. See you soon. I froze. In the silence, even my breathing seemed loud. I reached for the mouse, the cursor moved on its own. A line reappeared in the activity log. User logged in. From my account. That evening, I realized for the first time that this wasn't just a game. Someone was watching me. And that someone seemed to know more about me than I did, about my own mother. I didn't sleep most of the night. A phrase from the letter kept running through my head. Please don't look for me and the child. Who was this man? And why was my mother so afraid that he would find us? In the morning, I took Mia to school. She was laughing, showing me something on her phone, talking about her project. I nodded, but I wasn't listening. All I could think about was the box of letters and the name John Barton. When I got home, I opened my laptop. The name wasn't uncommon, but I found a match in an old database. Dr. John Barton, psychologist, deceased. The article was dated 2010. Died in a fire in his own home. A well-known clinical psychologist and researcher of experimental therapy methods. He had a reputation as a talented but controversial specialist. Several patients accused him of unethical practices. The case was closed after his death. I clicked on the photo. The quality was mediocre, but the picture showed a man in a white coat surrounded by a group of patients. In the background was a woman looking straight at the camera. She was young with dark hair. Her face looked familiar. My mother. I stepped away from the table trying to breathe evenly. There was no doubt. It was her. The caption under the photo read, "Patients of the Trust Program, 1998. The next article was about missing women linked to the Barton Clinic. The journalist who wrote about it lost his job after threats from the Barton family. I knew this style when reporters are forced to remain silent. But one word struck me the most. Among the patients was Grace Morgan. My last name. My mother. I opened my notebook and added new items. 5. Grace Morgan, patient at the Barton Clinic. 6. Case closed after his death. The phone rang sharply. The editor. You said you were taking a short vacation. His voice was familiar but wary. If you need anything, I can get the archives. Find everything related to Barton. Dr. John Barton. The one who died in the fire? That's the one. Pause. Be careful with that name, Alice. Someone tried digging into it once. It didn't end well. Just find what you can, I said and hung up. I spent the rest of the day behind the screen. Forums, excerpts from comments, old discussions. One user wrote, their trust therapy was strange. They made people tell everything and then used it against them. My chest tightened. I remembered the tape from the box. It had an inscription on it. Session number 5, Trust Therapy. At the time I didn't know what that meant. When Mia came home from school I tried to look calm. We have a new school counselor, she said. He's very nice with a gentle voice. What's his name? I tried to speak evenly. Dr. Jonathan, she replied. Barton. I was stunned. What does he do at school? He says he wants the children to feel safe. I nodded even though my head was spinning. Barton. The same surname. That evening I opened the photo of Barton Sr. again. And for the first time I noticed a young man standing next to him about 20 years old. The caption under the photo read, the doctor's son, a psychology student, Jonathan Barton. I looked at the screen then at the photo. They were connected. And now one of them was at my child's school. I put away all the documents and turned off the light. But sleep did not come. Sometime after midnight, my phone lit up with a new message without an address. Don't repeat her mistake. I stared at those words for a long time. And I realized the past had indeed begun to speak. That night I walked around the apartment for a long time. The neighbors had been asleep for a long time, the windows were dark, and there was no sound in the stairwell. But I heard every rustle. After the message, don't repeat her mistake, I had the feeling that someone was nearby. Not in the usual sense, not an imaginary fear, but something practical, physical. Like when you know for sure that there is someone else in the room besides you. In the morning everything seemed normal. The sun, the smell of coffee, Mia's clear voice. I convinced myself that I was just imagining things. But little things started to fall out of their usual rhythm. When I returned home after taking Mia to school, I saw that the box of letters was not where I had left it. Last night I put it on a shelf in the closet. Today it was on the table in the living room. The lid was open as if someone had opened it. I stopped holding my breath. Maybe I moved it myself, I said aloud to hear my own voice. I opened the box. The letters were there, but they weren't in the order I had arranged them. One of the envelopes was open, even though I hadn't touched it. It was empty. I put it aside and took the notebook. I added a new line. 7, box moved. 1 letter missing. During the day my neighbor Mr. Thompson called. He was an old man who always stood on his porch like a guard. Miss Alice, he said. Someone entered your yard yesterday after 11 o'clock. Are you sure? Absolutely. The shadow of a man of medium height. I thought it might be your husband, but then I remembered that you live alone with your daughter. I felt cold. Did you see his face? No, just his silhouette. He was standing by the kitchen window, then he disappeared. I was about to call the police, but he didn't come into the house. I thanked him and hung up. That evening I checked all the locks. Double locks, windows closed, alarm on. But when I returned to the bedroom, the light in the hallway suddenly went out. Then it came back on. I thought about the wiring. It was old and needed to be replaced. But then I noticed something else. The laptop on the desk had turned itself on. The screen glowed white, and words gradually appeared on it. Don't look for him. I froze. My fingers were shaking, but I still went over and took a photo of the screen with my phone. Then I turned off the power and pulled the cord out of the socket. When Mia came home from school, she was unusually quiet. She brought a drawing, not her usual colorful one, but a simple pencil sketch. It showed a dark figure by the window. Who is it? I asked, trying not to show my concern. Grandma, she replied confidently. She said she came when you were asleep. I felt my stomach tighten. When exactly, Mia? At night. She said not to worry and not to look for that man. I was stunned. What man? She didn't say. Just that man. I stroked her head and told her not to talk to anyone else about it. Then I went to the bathroom so she wouldn't see how shaken I was. Later that evening, I opened my laptop again. After a brief freeze, it turned on normally, as if nothing had happened. No messages, no traces. But when I checked the user history, I saw that yesterday there was another login at 11:46 p.m. Almost the same time the neighbor had mentioned. I opened my notebook and typed a new line. 8. Someone enters the yard. 9. System messages with the phrase, "Don't look for him." 10. Mia says that grandma came. Then I wrote, "Who is he? And why is everyone telling me not to look for him?" I signed the date and put a period. But my hand shook, and the ink left a smudged stain that resembled the 3 words that had haunted me since I opened the envelope. John Barton is alive. The policeman standing at the door looked tired. Middle-aged, hands in his pockets, his face indifferent but not rude. "You say someone could have been in your house," he repeated, leafing through his notebook. The box was open. 1 letter was missing. "A neighbor saw a man in the yard," I replied. He glanced around the room. "The locks are intact, the windows aren't broken. Maybe someone you gave the keys to?" "No one has the keys." "Well," he made a note, "if it happens again, call us." He lowered his voice. "And between us, you're not the first to mention that name. But without any records or witnesses, there's not much we can do." I felt a familiar disappointment. They hadn't seen anything unusual, so nothing had happened. For them it was just nerves. For me it was proof that someone was already close by. After the police left, I put the letters in the safe. For the first time a thought occurred to me. If this is all connected to Barton, then he must be somewhere nearby. The next day I went to school. Mia had a consultation with the new school psychologist. I arranged to see him in person, a routine procedure, but my stomach was in knots. He was younger than I had imagined. Short hair, glasses, a calm smile. When I entered the office, he stood up. "Miss Morgan? I'm Jonathan Barton. Nice to meet you." His voice was even and warm. "My daughter said you've already spoken with her," I replied. "Yes, she's a very smart girl. A little reserved, but observant." He gestured for me to sit down. "I always try to talk to parents to better understand their children. Do you mind?" "Of course not." The first few minutes of the conversation seemed normal. He asked about the family, how Mia was coping with the loss of her grandmother, how she had adapted after the move. Everything was polite and professional, until he said, "Your mother was an interesting woman." I felt a chill inside. "Did you know her?" "Not personally," he smiled. "I just read her columns in an old magazine. She was a good writer. She knew how to write about things that people prefer not to notice." I remained silent, trying to figure out if it was just a coincidence. "She wrote a lot about the psychology of trust," he continued. "I can relate to that. My family also worked in this field." "Your family?" "Yes, my father was a psychologist. He used to be famous but not anymore." I pretended to just be listening, but my heart was racing. "What was his name?" "John," he replied calmly. "John Barton." He noticed how I froze. "Have you heard of him?" I nodded, trying not to show my anxiety. "A little. My mother mentioned him." He tilted his head. "Interesting. Few people remember him now." We ended the conversation a few minutes later. He said goodbye politely and told me he was always ready to help if Mia needed support. When I left school, it was already getting dark outside. I walked slowly, feeling that each step took me further away not only from the building, but also from something much deeper, from the idea that it was all just a coincidence. At home, Mia was watching cartoons. I made dinner, trying to appear calm. "How do you like the new psychologist?" I asked when we sat down at the table. "He's nice. He says I have a wonderful imagination, and that grandma probably passed it on to me." I put down my fork. "What else did he say?" "That sometimes people don't disappear forever. They just change the way they are around us." I was silent. Her words sounded like a repetition of someone else's phrases. "And that we all leave letters," she added, as if in passing. "Even if we don't write them on paper." I had heard that phrase before. From someone else. Later, when Mia fell asleep, I went back to the safe. I took out the letters and looked through them. Everything was in place. Only one sheet, which I had once put aside, was out of place. On it was a short line that hadn't been there before. "We all leave letters." The same handwriting as the rest. But the ink was fresh. I didn't sleep most of the night. That short line, "We all leave letters," wouldn't leave my head. I looked through the photos of the letters, my notes, compared the handwriting. It looked identical, but the ink was fresh, the paper wasn't yellowed, the lines weren't cracked like the others. It couldn't be an old letter. Someone had touched these sheets just days before. In the morning I called the school. The secretary answered. "Can I speak to Dr. Barton?" I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. "He's not seeing anyone today. He says he's taking the day off." The day off? After our first meeting, I hung up the phone and realized I had to check everything myself. My mother's house was on the other side of town. I opened the door with a spare key, and the smell of age and dust immediately hit my nose. She kept everything: old magazines, records, recorded cassettes. I walked through the living room and stopped at the bookshelf. Among the thick volumes was a small box of cassettes, labeled by hand. One had a label: Session Number 5, Trust Therapy. I inserted the cassette into an old tape recorder. The speaker crackled at first. Then a man's voice began to sound, calm, even almost gentle. "Grace, do you know why we're here?" "Because I can't sleep," Mom replied. Her voice was younger but recognizable. "Sleep is control. You're afraid of losing it. And trust is also control. We can learn to give it away." Pause. Breathing can be heard, the rustling of paper. "You have to learn to tell the truth. Speak up and you will be saved." Mom's voice grew quieter. "If I tell, he'll find out." "Who?" "The one who writes the letters." I turned off the tape recorder. My heart was pounding. The room was silent, except for a car passing by outside the window. I sat for a few minutes staring at the cassette. Then I turned it on again. "Grace," he says, "you have to talk. It will help both you and your child. I don't want her to repeat my mistakes." "What's her name?" My mother's voice was barely audible, but I made it out. "Alice." A chill ran through me. I turned off the tape recorder, took out the cassette, and put it in my bag. I noticed a small ink stain on the cover. It was the same shade as the stain that had recently appeared on the letter. At home, I listened to the tape again and made a recording on my laptop. Next to the keyboard was a cup of coffee that had long since cooled. At the end of the recording, a man's voice repeated the same phrase. "Trust is confession. Speak and you will be saved." He said it with such confidence, as if he believed every word. I stopped the recording and just sat there listening to the silence. I suddenly remembered another clipping from my mother's archive. The materials about the Barton Clinic mentioned that patients were encouraged to write letters as part of their therapy. This meant one simple thing. Jonathan's father had reference samples of my mother's handwriting, phrases, even her style of address. If his son had inherited the archive, he could reproduce any letter to make it look authentic. Mia came home from school closer to evening. She looked tired but smiled. "Mom, there was a different teacher today, not Dr. Barton. He said Mr. Jonathan is on vacation." "On vacation?" "He's been working here for a week." I couldn't help saying, "Yes. They said he went to visit his family." I didn't answer. She went to her room, and I stayed in the kitchen, flipping through my notebook and thinking about how many coincidences could happen in a row. Later that evening, I decided to review the security system recordings. We installed cameras after the box incident. The first few days, nothing. But at night, after the police visit around 2 o'clock, the camera captured a faint light coming from the kitchen, a laptop screen, and the shadow of a person sitting at the table. I zoomed in on the frame. The face was not visible, only the profile, but it looked familiar. Too familiar. A window flashed on the screen, and in the top line, blurred but legible, I could see the text. Session Number 5, Trust Therapy. My tape. My laptop. And someone else's hands on it. That night I didn't sleep at all. The next morning I took Mia to school and stayed in the car. I waited until she disappeared behind the door, watching to see if anyone followed her. In the courtyard, the teacher on duty smiled at the children. Parents hurried to work. Everything looked normal. But I was no longer at ease. When I got home, my first thought was to check the camera. The night's recordings were clean. No movement, nothing suspicious. The shadow sitting behind my laptop remained only on that one file. I felt a strange emptiness. Even fear has its limits. After it, only fatigue remains. I made coffee, opened my laptop, and looked through the list of letters in the safe again. Everything was in place. But a new message window appeared on the main screen. "Do you trust your daughter?" A message from an unknown contact. No avatar, no address. I clicked delete. A few seconds later it reappeared. The same phrase. I closed my laptop, turned off the Wi-Fi, and sat down on the sofa. I wondered if I should call the police again. But what would I say? Someone is asking me about trust via message? They would just smile. After lunch, Mia came home. I was making dinner, trying to look calm. She sat down at the table and took out her phone. Mom, can I play for a bit? Sure. Just no weird chats, okay? She looked up. I'm not chatting with anyone. Well, except for one friend. I put down my spoon. What friend? Well, he's not really a friend. Just someone who wrote to me a few days ago. He says he knew Grandma. I sat down carefully opposite her. And what does he write? That Grandma talked about me a lot. That she was proud of me. And that I shouldn't be afraid to dream. Mia, please show me these messages. She hesitated noticeably, but handed me her phone. The chat contained ordinary phrases, no aggression, no strange photos. Only one thing alarmed me. Your mother will soon realize that the truth cannot be hidden. Just like trust. I took the phone. Where did you get this contact? He just appeared in the list. His name is Sebastian. I blocked the account and turned off the phone. Mia was silent, but there was hurt surprise in her eyes. Mom, you said that trust is important. Trust is important. But not to everyone, I replied quietly. In the evening when she was asleep, I turned on my laptop and checked all the connections. Someone was indeed logging into the system from a remote device. More precisely from my own account but from another city. The geolocation showed the school district where the school is located. I felt my heart sink. At that moment, another message appeared on the screen. Don't disconnect me, Mom. The line flashed for a few seconds and disappeared. I tried to check the history, but the system returned an error. I got up from the table and walked over to the window. It was dark outside, with a few cars and lights from the neighbors' windows. Everything looked normal, even too calm. I closed the curtains, checked the locks and turned off my laptop. Then I took the tape with my mother's recording and hid it away in a box with documents. A simple thought suddenly struck me. If my mother had undergone trust therapy and left me these letters, maybe she had also been forced to talk the way I was being forced to talk now. When I returned to the bedroom, the phone on the nightstand was lit up with a new message. No sender. Now it's your turn to talk. I sat on the edge of the bed, clutching the phone in my hands. Mia's steady breathing could be heard from the next room. And for the first time in all these days, I realized that I couldn't stay silent any longer. I started with the simplest thing. I went to the police. The officer on duty listened politely, took a few notes, and asked if I had any evidence. The messages are deleted, I said. But I saw them appear. Did you take a screenshot? I didn't have time. I understand. We can file a report, but without screenshots or recordings, nothing will come of it. I thanked her and left. Of course, no one would believe someone who said that messages disappear on their own. Sounds like fiction. But I knew what I had seen. And that someone was trying to convince me otherwise. On my way home, I stopped by a friend who works in IT. We had worked together on several articles for the editorial office. I briefly described the situation. He sighed, connected my laptop to his equipment, and began to check it. You had a remote connection, he said after a few minutes. Someone is using your account but from inside the system. Without a password. So it's a hack? It looks like it. Or someone who had physical access. He didn't ask any more questions. He copied the logs, set up new protection, and advised me to change all my passwords. I thanked him, although it didn't make me feel any better. When I returned, Mia was drawing on the floor. Chalk, a notebook, a few colored pencils. What is it? I asked. Our house. And the people who live in it, she replied. In the drawing there were the two of us, a house, trees, and the sun. And another figure standing apart near the gate. Who is that? That's Grandma's friend. I felt my throat tighten. Who told you about him? Sebastian. He said that this man protects us. I took the drawing and tried to smile, but it didn't work out. Mia, please don't talk to him anymore, okay? She nodded silently. Later, when she fell asleep, I checked the mailbox. Inside was a sheet of paper with the printed title of an old article of mine. An investigation into abuse at clinics that practiced trust therapy. On the back were a few words in familiar handwriting. Don't trust him. I recognized my mother's handwriting. But the paper was new. And the ink was still wet. I stood at the door, holding the sheet of paper, until the light on the landing went out. Only 3 sentences ran through my head. She's warning me. She knew. And he didn't disappear. I returned to the apartment, closed the curtains, and turned off all the devices, even the TV. In the silence, I could hear only my own breathing. The next morning, I went to school earlier than usual. In the hallway, the receptionist said that Dr. Barton had already returned. His door was ajar. I knocked. Come in, I heard his voice. He was sitting at his desk, looking through some papers. Everything was calm and confident, as if nothing unusual had happened. Are you back already? I asked. Yes. I was away on business for a few days. How is Mia? She's fine. But, doctor, I think someone from outside is contacting her. What makes you think that? She's been corresponding with strangers who know details about my mother. He looked at me intently. Maybe it's just a child's imagination? Children often invent friends to cope with feelings of loss. My mother also talked about a friend who listened to her before she died. He smiled slightly. Maybe it was her therapist. People often idealize those who make them feel safe. I felt something inside me grow cold. You knew her, didn't you? I asked. We all know someone, Miss Morgan, he replied calmly. Even after they're gone. I left the school and stood at the gate for a long time, not knowing what to do next. My phone vibrated in my pocket. A new message. Your mother was not wrong. We are simply continuing her work. The screen flashed, and the message disappeared. This time I didn't delete the history or restart my phone. I just stood in the cold wind and felt everything that seemed to be under control slowly slipping away. That evening I finally decided to go through my mother's boxes for good. If someone was trying to drag me back into the past, I needed to know what was hiding there. The papers smelled of dust and old ink. Each folder contained newspaper clippings, notes, and drafts. On one page, the headline stood out in bold type. Renowned psychologist suspected in patient's death. Case closed. Next to it was a photograph. A man in a white coat, next to a young woman with dark hair, both smiling as if for an advertising shoot. The woman was my mother. Under the photo was the name. Dr. John Barton. Not Jonathan but John. I reread the paragraph several times. After an incident at a private clinic that caused widespread controversy, Dr. Barton lost his license but continued to practice abroad. The patient, 26-year-old Grace Morgan, disappeared without a trace and was later found dead in her apartment. The police found no signs of violence. I felt a chill run through me. Mom never talked about it. On the other half of the clipping was a short comment from one of Barton's former colleagues. His method was to create absolute trust, but not everyone could handle it. I put the sheet on the table and took a photo with my phone. My hands were shaking. Mia ran into the kitchen with her phone in her hands. Mom, look at this. She held out the screen to me. I looked and opened chat. A new contact. The profile photo was blank. The last message. I knew your grandmother. She wanted us to finally meet. Who is this? I asked. Sebastian. He's back. I took the phone, trying not to show my panic. What else did he write? That he works with Dr. Barton. And that we're related. It was like being doused with cold water. What kind of relatives? Well, he said that Barton is my grandfather. She said it so calmly, as if repeating something she had already accepted as fact. That night I sat on the floor in front of the safe for a long time. I laid out all the letters, clippings, and tapes. Phrases ran through my head. Don't look for him. Trust his confession. We all leave letters behind. My mother was not a victim of circumstance. She knew what she was getting herself into. And she knew it wouldn't end with her. I opened my laptop and typed Dr. John Barton into the search bar. Old archives, forms of former patients, a few brief mentions in psychology blogs, nothing concrete. Just one strange publication in an old magazine. The continuity of the method. A conversation with Dr. Jonathan Barton on trust, therapy, and memory. In the photo, him. The same man from school. And the caption below. Son of renowned psychologist John Barton. I sat staring at the screen until the laptop screen went dark. I heard quiet footsteps in the hallway. Mia. Mom, are you still awake? Yes, sweetie, just working. I dreamed about Grandma. She said everything would become clear soon. She came closer and hugged me. What else did she say? That we have to listen to him. She said it calmly, with that childlike directness that makes adults' hearts ache. I hugged her tighter. Don't listen to anyone who talks about her. Okay? Even if it's someone who says they knew her. Mia nodded, but I knew she didn't fully understand. When she left, I looked at my phone. A new message flashed on the screen. Trust is a legacy, Alice. You're just continuing what she started. And below it was a photo. Mom smiling, holding a baby. Behind her was the shadow of a man, similar to the one I saw on the tape. I returned to my mother's house the next day. I had only one thing on my mind, to find out where it all began. The key turned stiffly in the lock, and inside it was quiet. Everything was in its place, but it felt as if someone had been there recently. The air was still but fresh. On the table in the hallway, there was a light layer of dust, except for a small handprint. I walked into the living room. Under the carpet was a slight protrusion that I had noticed before but never checked. I lifted the carpet, moved the board aside, and found a small metal hatch underneath. A safe. Old without electronics with a rotating lock. I didn't know the combination, but in the notebook my mother always kept on the nightstand on the last page, there was a short number 5-12-7. I tried it. The lock clicked. Inside were several envelopes, cassettes, and a small flash drive. The envelopes were labeled with years: 1994, 1996, 2001. One had an inscription: "If something happens to me, his son will find it." I held the paper with trembling hands. Son. Jonathan. I opened the flash drive on my laptop right there in the house. Inside were dozens of video files. Short, untitled. I clicked on the first one. The camera was in the corner of the room, and a young woman was sitting on a chair. She was crying and speaking in fragments. Off-screen, a man's voice said, "Talk. It will help you." "I don't want to. I can't. Trust is confession. If you don't trust me, you'll stay here forever." I fast-forwarded through several videos. All of them featured different women, the same room, the same voice. In one video, further down the list, the camera shook as if it had been placed poorly. In the corner of the frame, a young man with dark hair stood next to the patient. He was writing something down, leaning toward the microphone, saying quietly, "Dad, she's not listening again." I stopped the playback. Jonathan. Mom didn't just know Barton Sr., she was part of his experiments, and he involved his son. I took out the flash drive, put it in my bag, and took the tapes and letters. As I was leaving the house, I noticed that someone had left an unstamped envelope on the door. Inside was a printed text: "You finally found the cash. Now let's talk honestly." No signature, no fingerprints. At home, I opened the safe and put everything on the table. I listened to Mia laughing in the other room. She was watching cartoons. Her voice sounded calm, normal, but I knew that this calm was temporary. I opened my laptop. There was a new message in my inbox from an unknown address with the subject line: "Session continues." I opened it. The text was short: "Trust is a two-way process. Your mother couldn't handle the confession. Let's see if you can." Attached was an image, a still from one of the videos, where my mother was sitting in front of the camera, her eyes red from crying. That same evening I made up my mind. I wrote a reply. "What do you want?" The reply came in a minute. "Let's meet. Don't be afraid. I'll explain everything you want to know." I knew who it was. Jonathan Barton. I sat in front of the screen for a long time, trying to decide what was worse, silence or continuing the game. Then I typed a short reply. "Okay, tell me when." He replied instantly. "Tomorrow, 5 p.m. The school office." I looked at those words and felt my stomach tighten. For the first time in many weeks, everything became painfully clear. If I didn't go, he would find another way. If I went, I would finally hear the truth. Or get lost for good. I arrived at school 10 minutes before 5. The building was almost empty. Only the janitor in the lobby was looking at the news on his phone, without looking up. I said I had a quick chat with Dr. Barton and he just nodded. The hallways seemed unnaturally quiet. On the walls were children's drawings and signs with class names. When I reached his office, the door was ajar. Jonathan was sitting at his desk, without his coat, wearing a dark shirt. When I entered, he looked up and smiled. "You came. I knew you would." "You left me a message," I said. "Why?" "To finish the story your mother started." He stood up and came closer. "You have a right to know the truth, Alice. But not the one you imagine." I held my bag tighter. Inside was a voice recorder already turned on. "You manipulated her," I replied. "Those trust therapies were experiments on people." He shook his head. "She was obsessed. She used my father to become famous. But when he wanted to help her, she ran away. And she lied to everyone that she was a victim." His voice was calm, but his eyes never left me. "She couldn't handle the truth," he said. "And now you're standing at that same threshold." I took a step back. "You wrote me messages? Hacked into my computer? Into my child?" His smile disappeared. "I just wanted to help. Your daughter needs the truth. She needs to know where she comes from. She has nothing to do with you. Are you sure?" He pushed aside a stack of papers and showed me a few sheets. "These are Grace's letters," he said. "Her own handwriting. She wrote to my father, even after it was all supposedly over." I looked at them, similar handwriting, familiar words. "But I'm not sure they're real." "You forged them." "I just kept them. Because I knew that one day someone like you would come looking for someone to blame." His gaze became firm. "Everything you found has been misinterpreted. She knew what she was getting into. She asked for this therapy herself." "The therapy that killed her?" "She died because she didn't trust it completely." The phrase sounded almost gentle, which made it even scarier. I tried to speak calmly, but inside I was boiling. You're playing with the same words your father did. You even copy his intonation. It's not a game. It's a method, he said. You're here too because you can't stop searching for the truth. And that is trust. I took a step toward the door. You won't get another word out of me. He bowed his head as if he regretted it. You've said enough. And then I saw that his phone was on, the camera pointed at me. I grabbed my bag. You were recording the conversation? It's therapy, Alice. I left the office without looking back. The hallway seemed longer than before. My heart was pounding in my chest, my fingers were trembling. I barely had time to get my phone to call the police when I heard his voice behind me. She didn't trust me. And look how that turned out. Quicken my pace. When I reached the exit, 2 officers were standing by the door. I didn't even have time to figure out where they came from. Alice Morgan, one of them asked. We received a call about a possible danger. I nodded, gasping for breath. He's in there. Dr. Barton. But when we returned to the office, the door was wide open. The desk was empty. Only one sheet of paper lay on the floor. One of those letters he had shown me. At the top was written, "Your turn to trust." And no other trace. The following days merged into one endless stream. The police arrived that same evening, inspected the office, took the letter as evidence, and reviewed the surveillance cameras. The recording showed Jonathan leaving school 10 minutes before my call. Calmly, without haste, without suitcases or papers. He just disappeared. The officers promised to look into it. But I saw the same disbelief in their eyes as before. To them, it looked like another story about an emotionally vulnerable woman who was exaggerating. In the report they gave me to sign, I caught a glimpse of the note related appeals, to 1999-2011. I returned home around midnight. Mia was already asleep. In the living room, there was only the dim light of a nightlight and the sound of the refrigerator. I sank onto the sofa and opened my laptop. My email was empty, so were my social media accounts. And yet, a few minutes later, the screen flashed and a new message appeared. Trust doesn't disappear. It changes form. The sender was unknown, but the account name was Trust Session 01. I took a screenshot and turned off the internet. A minute later, the screen came back to life. The message appeared right on top of my desktop, as if from inside the computer. Your mother was afraid once too, but she spoke up. I felt my heart beating in my throat. All the security systems, new passwords, encryption, nothing worked. Someone had access deeper than I could have imagined. The next morning, I got a call from the editorial office. Alice, have you seen it? The editor's voice was tense. What exactly? The news on the internet. Someone has published Grace Morgan's letter to Barton. Your mother, it seems. I opened the website. The article had a sensational headline. A patient's confession. The truth that was hidden. The text contained excerpts from the letters Jonathan had shown me. They were fake but presented as genuine. My mother was portrayed as a manipulator. A woman who allegedly blackmailed her therapist and slandered him to get revenge. Under Barton's photo was the caption. Jonathan Barton, psychotherapist, son of a renowned psychologist, comments on his family's history. His comments were cold, measured, perfectly edited. My family has been silent for a long time. But the time has come to restore the truth. No one is to blame for not being able to endure the therapy process. I felt sick. I wrote to the editor-in-chief. This is a lie. I have recordings, cassettes, a flash drive. I know, but right now all the media are reposting this. Until we have official confirmation, we cannot support your version. My phone didn't stop ringing all day. Unknown numbers, messages, comments, some sympathized, others accused. You want to profit from your mother's tragedy. Again with these imaginary traumas. How long can you keep digging up the past? I turned off all notifications. But I couldn't resist checking my email. There was a new video waiting for me. A short clip. The camera captures a woman at a table, her face unseen. She writes something on a piece of paper, then burns it. Voiceover, Jonathan. Sometimes to clear your memory, you have to burn its source. This video was already gaining views on social media. By evening I felt isolated. The editorial office was not responding. My colleagues were silent. Even my acquaintances began to avoid conversation. Only one letter in my mailbox was different. No address, no subject. Don't be afraid of the truth. My mother's handwriting. A scan of an old letter I had never seen before. I looked at those 3 words and understood. Either I prove that this is not fiction, or they will erase everything, my mother and me. I took the flash drive out of the safe and checked the files. All the videos were intact. But there was a new document in the folder, created yesterday. The name. Final Trust. Docs. I opened it. The text consisted of only one sentence. We will meet when you finally believe. And below that, the date. Tomorrow, 5 p.m. The same time we met for the first time. I turned off my laptop, walked around the room, checked the locks. Mia was drawing in her room, calm, unaware. I stood by the door and thought about how much longer I would have to protect her from something that couldn't be proven to anyone. In the morning, I had to do what my mother didn't have time to do. Expose him completely. I didn't sleep all night. One thought kept running through my head. If I don't get the evidence now, it will be destroyed. The flash drive was in my bag, the voice recorder was in my pocket, and my phone was charged. The school was empty. It was a cold evening, and the playground was deserted. The guard at the reception desk was dozing with his phone in his hands. I forgot my notebook in Barton's office, I said. He waved his hand. Go, but hurry, I'm closing up. The hallway smelled of fresh paint. On the second floor, the door to his office was unlocked. My heart was pounding, but I went in. Everything looked familiar. Shelves, children's toys, a cup of half-drunk coffee, an open laptop. I sat down, turned on the device, and inserted the flash drive. On the screen were folders labeled Sessions, Letters, and a file named Archive MP4. I opened it and saw everything. Records of sessions, women crying under the pressure of a voice behind the scenes. Documents describing the method. How to make people open up. How to shape confessions with letters. How to edit memories to suit a particular angle. In the letters folder were digital copies of letters, supposedly from my mother, but in Barton's style, torn phrases, ready to become compromising material. I pressed the phone, turned on the voice recorder, and began to copy everything. When the list of files appeared, one name stood out. Final Trust Script. Docs. I opened it, instructions on how to create videos, where to send them to shape public opinion, and a short handwritten note. Son Executor. At that moment, I heard a noise behind the door. I hid the flash drive in my bag and froze behind the curtain near the shelf with children's books. The voice recorder was running. The door opened. Jonathan entered. Dark shirt, glasses, his usual calm. Cold confidence in his eyes. He put his bag on the table and looked around the room. I didn't breathe. He sat down and looked through the papers. I came out from behind the shelf. The door creaked and he looked up. No surprise. You're here again, he said calmly. What do you want, Alice? The truth, I replied. Who created these letters? Who used this method against people? He smiled slightly. You came for drama. But I understand. You found the archive. I raised my phone, the recorder clicked. He noticed but didn't stop. You're portraying my family as manipulators, he said. You want to erase everything my mother could say. But your recordings, they're part of the method too. You force people to admit things that didn't happen, I said. We help them see the truth, he replied. Who says the truth is the same for everyone? We just gave them a mirror. His voice was calm even, but his words sounded like cold instructions. He talked about restoring memory, about how sometimes you have to create conditions for people to say what will set them free. Every sentence was like a lecture, and like proof. You're recording, he said suddenly. No surprise there. I held the recorder closer. It will be evidence, I replied. The police. He smiled. They have nothing but your words. And your words are just the voice of a woman who couldn't come to terms with the past. He picked up the folder with copies of the letters and put it in his bag. You won't get away, I said. I'll send everything. And the video. And just then, a voice rang out from the hallway. Police. Open up. Jonathan jumped up, opened the window and jumped onto the fire escape. I rushed to him, too late. Only a silhouette in the darkness, the rustling of bushes below. Officers burst through the door. Where is he? Through the window. I gasped. One ran downstairs, the other called for backup. But the yard was already empty, only footprints in the dust under the window. I stood there, trembling with the phone in my hand. The recorder had recorded everything. I had the files, the video, his voice. Evidence. The officer said quietly, almost sympathetically. It's good that you came forward. But cases like this are difficult to prove. He can claim that you trespassed. I nodded. I knew. But now I had more than just words. I sent everything to my editor and lawyer. Then I called an acquaintance who worked in law enforcement. Don't give him time to destroy the evidence. When I left the office, I had one thought. He ran away, but he left his voice behind. And with that voice came a chance to change everything. The morning began in chaos. My phone was ringing off the hook. Journalists, police, unknown numbers. Excerpts from my voice recorder had already been leaked online. Short, fragmented phrases, but enough to cause an explosion. You used people. We just helped them speak. Your mother couldn't handle the confession. Let's see if you can. The last line became a headline on social media. The news called it, "The Scandal Surrounding the Barton Method." I sat in the kitchen with cold coffee. Mia was getting ready for school. "Mom, aren't you going to work today?" "I'm staying home today." In the newsfeed, there was a portrait of Jonathan Barton with an interview about trust as the foundation of therapy. Under the photo was a quote, "I believe in the power of words, but sometimes words can be distorted." Below was a video of our conversation and hundreds of comments. From "This is the end of his career" to "Another manipulation." I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my journalist account and uploaded the full version of the recording, unedited. I added scans of letters, documents from a flash drive, stills from video experiments, and a short text. My mother died because she couldn't stand the lies disguised as therapy. This method is not treatment but a form of power, and it must end. I clicked publish. The reaction was immediate. The post went viral in a few hours. 2 hours later, the district published a short message. "We are reviewing the materials, a separate investigation has been opened, and work with the archives is underway." It was picked up by independent media, psychological forums, activists, and groups of former patients of Barton Senior's clinic. New stories poured in. People underwent trust sessions and felt that something was wrong with them. By evening, the police called. "Ms. Morgan, we've reviewed your files. There are similarities with the Barton Senior Archive, which was investigated 15 years ago." What does that mean? The case has been reopened. When I hung up the phone, an unknown number called. "Do you really think you've won?" It was the same voice. "I have recordings. There are people who saw what you did. People will get tired. The internet will forget. You'll be left alone just like her." The line went dead. A moment later, a message came from a colleague. "The police found his car on the side of the road. He's gone." That evening, I was almost silent. Mia was asleep, and I sat among boxes of letters as if in a maze. The fear was gone. Only fatigue and clarity remained. Mom didn't write these letters for me to keep. She left them for me to continue. I printed out the last letter. The handwriting was shaky, but the letters were confident. Trust is not something you give, something you get back. The next day, I created a website called The Trust Files and posted everything: videos, documents, testimonials. Open access. The news spread again. TV shows, blogs, and international websites discussed the Barton method. The comments said, "It was a cult disguised as therapy. Finally, the truth is coming out." Among the messages was a short phrase from an anonymous account. "She would be proud of you." In the evening, Mia asked, "Is he in jail now?" "Not yet, but he will be soon." "What if not? Then they'll find him. Either way." She leaned silently against me, and for the first time in a long time, I felt not uncertainty but calm. Later, the detective called. "We found him. A hotel on the outskirts of town. Alive. He was planning to leave the country. Now he won't." I thanked him and closed my laptop. On the screen were hundreds of messages from people who wrote that they finally understood themselves better because someone had called things by their proper names. I went to Mia. She was sleeping with her palm open just like my mother used to. I covered her with a blanket and whispered, "It's over." I knew it wasn't quite over. The past doesn't disappear, it changes form. This time it took the form of a flame that burned not to destroy, but to purify. We spent a week in court and at the lawyer's office. Jonathan was brought in under escort. He was charged with evidence tampering, psychological abuse, and breach of trust. The trial was just beginning, but this time we had more than just words. The flash drive and voice recorder contained his voice, instructions, and complete recordings of the sessions. These were no longer rumors, they were evidence. After the first hearing, I returned home. I laid out the sheets of paper, envelopes, and tapes on the table. Mia sat next to me, looking older than her 9 years. "Are you going to do something with these letters?" she asked quietly. I had been thinking about it since the moment I first found the envelope marked John Barton. Mom kept these letters not as a confession, but as a warning. Her voice. Her memory. I couldn't just throw them away, but I didn't want to leave them open either. "I'll destroy most of them," I said. "But I'll keep one. For you. When you're ready." She nodded and returned to her game. I took the box of letters. My husband helped me carry everything to the stove. We placed a metal bowl on it, lit the first sheet, and watched as the fire slowly consumed the ink. Each envelope, each piece of paper gradually turned to ash. Nothing that could be used as a tool of manipulation remained. I paused over one letter, the one that began with the words, "If anything happens to me, His son will find him. I couldn't burn it. I folded it, put it in an envelope and signed it. For Mia when she's ready. I put it in the safe at home. Why don't you burn everything? Mia asked, approaching quietly. Because sometimes memories are not needed for revenge, I replied, but to avoid repeating mistakes. She leaned against me. She knew part of the truth but not all of it. And that was right. Ahead of us lay conversations with a therapist, slow explanations, and preparation for the day when she herself would want to open the safe. A few days later, the hearings began. Publicity was no longer the only evidence. Our records were on the prosecutor's desk. When other women testified, everything fell into place. It was not a coincidence but a system, a method that broke people under the guise of treatment. The cases continued, but the process was underway. After one hearing, I opened my old laptop, the same one that once displayed, "You finally opened it." The cursor flashed on the screen next to a short line. Message delivered. I pressed enter. A system confirmation appeared. Message delivered. Maybe it was a coincidence. But to me it sounded like a quiet sign of completion. It wasn't a triumph, more of a relief. We didn't get a happy ending. Ahead of us lay lawyers' statements, sleepless nights, therapy for Mia. But the worst was over. I knew who was behind it all and I had proof. A small but real victory. The past remained a part of our home, but it was no longer its center. I kept a few things, my mother's photo, an old laptop, a newspaper clipping. It wasn't an altar of pain, but a place of remembrance. One evening, while watering a plant on the windowsill, Mia asked, "Mom, do you believe that people can change?" I smiled. Some do. But the main thing is that the next ones don't suffer like we did. She went off to play. I looked out the window where dusk was falling, and felt silence for the first time in a long time. Not the kind that weighs you down, but the kind that heals. I looked at my mother's photo and whispered, "I did as you asked. I found it. And I opened it." In response there was silence. But this time it was good. We closed the door on the past and began to return to normal life. Signing Mia up for classes, going to the park, planning weekends. Nothing big. Just life, real life, pieced together bit by bit.